This is the Project Management Podcast. We bring project management topics to beginners and experts. Find us on the web at www.thepmpodcast.com or send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com. Hello and welcome to episode number 43. I am Cornelius Fichtner. This is the Project Management Podcast for the 5th of August 2006. Today you will be hearing part 2 of our interview with David L. Davis on project portfolio management. But before we get to that, first, our usual announcements and helpful resources, and we also have a listener question for you today. Let's start out with listeners, with the new listeners. A big and warm welcome goes out to all our new listeners out there who may have found us through an article in the August edition of the PM Network magazine titled Social Networking, that was written by Lois Mentrup. And I'm very pleased to see that we got covered in there amongst other blogs from bloggers around the world, from project managers around the world. And I'm looking forward to having all of you new visitors here listen in to all the past shows and all the future shows. Well, let me go back to last week's episode when I said, hello and welcome to episode number 41. Why did I say episode number 41? It was episode number 42, of course, last week. Oh, well, nobody complained, nobody noticed. Today's episode is sponsored by BOT International, the provider of processes on demand. PMO processes, policies and dashboards can be quite a bother to set up, institutionalize and maintain. BOT's Processes on Demand solves this problem by providing customizable project management processes and templates, PMO policies and dashboards, and integration features to PPM and collaboration applications such as Microsoft Project Server and SharePoint. To learn more, please visit www.botinternational.com. Of course, if you visit our website, you can also just simply click on the banner that you see at the top right for our sponsor. And when you're on the website, you will notice a few changes that have gone up recently. First of all, you will see that I am now also publishing images of my interview guests. So if you would like to see what Derry Simmel from 2 weeks ago or David L. Davis last week and this week looks like, go check out the website and you can click on their picture and you'll see what they look like. Also, in the right-hand side, you will now find 3 polls, and I would really like your input there. The first poll is quite a simple one. Do you like the new website? Yes or no? The second one is, how long should a podcast last? I'd really like to know from you, how long do you think this program should last? I'm trying my best to keep it somewhere around 30 minutes. It's not going to happen today because David has a lot to say, and that's also why I broke the interview up into 2 episodes, which actually is the third poll on the site. Should long interviews be broken into 2 episodes? So these are the 3 polls on the right-hand side on every page on www.thepmpodcast.com, and I would appreciate it if you would give me your feedback on those 3 polls. Oh yes, of course, and when you stop by, don't forget to click on the link on the left-hand side labeled PM Templates to increase your productivity and check out the great PM templates that are offered there. Alright, let us move on to the listener question. This one comes from Paul Merrill out of the USA, and he wrote to me, recently, I was asked to complete an informal review of a new project management methodology being developed at my office. From completing my review, I noted that it was mostly a collection of templates, but little information on the actual methodology that the company wants us to follow. Your comments on methodologies and the fact that they were not just a collection of templates prompted this question. I was thinking that instead of trying to explain what a documented methodology looks like, I might provide them with a sample of a reasonable equivalent so that they can compare themselves to something. I was thinking that the example doesn't have to be the absolute best, but a fair example of a documented PM methodology. Then he goes on by mentioning that in an earlier podcast, I talked about the State of Michigan project management methodology, and that he was thinking of using that one, and whether or not I thought that this was a good methodology to use or not. Well, Paul, I answered him in an email and I said, in regards to the State of Michigan PM methodology, it's safe to assume that this methodology works for the state of Michigan and that it can be considered a good methodology. And you have to gauge for yourself, not just Paul, but also in your company, if you should use an external methodology. You have to gauge yourself. Is this comparable to what we're trying to do? The state of Michigan, not Michigan, the state of Michigan's project management methodology, they are in their third revision. And they obviously have a very high degree of process maturity and project management maturity within their state's departments. Now, does your company compare to this? Would maybe the document size scare people off? Should you go with something smaller? Attempt to reach for the low-hanging fruit in a case like this. In the end, it has to be your call. You have to take a look at what's out there, what methodologies you want, be it the one from State of Michigan or be it the Method 123 methodology or the 10-step methodology. You can choose whatever you like, but you have to make this call. All right, enough said. If you need a project management methodology, there are many out there that are either commercially available. Method 123 is one, 10-step is one. There are free ones out there like the State of Michigan. Take it, adopt it to your needs, and go with it. Allow me to focus on one single helpful resource for you today. And this is the Quality 101 podcast by Paul Palms. Paul Palms is, well, let's call him a quality guru. He's really out there. He's involved in quality management, and he works in the quality department of Northern Pipe. He does, of course, a podcast called Quality 101, and he received an email from his listener, Paul Tollenars. And Paul writes to Paul, basically, project management is the skills, tools, and management processes that are required to undertake a project successfully. For this, we need skills, tools, and processes. Could you please explain some of the tools you would use in a quality program to make processes work? I guess you use more than just a clipboard and pencil. Now, if you have never listened to the Quality 101 podcast by Paul Palms, then this is the moment where you should go over there. The link is, as always, in the show notes and in the helpful resources under the podcast section, and you will really be in for a treat. You're missing out. Personally, I'm not exactly in the quality business, but I was hooked listening to Paul after listening to only about 2 of his episodes. He is extremely knowledgeable. He's an excellent speaker, and he has this great chuckle. It's much better than mine, so it's really enjoyable to listen to him. So he has an answer for us. What kind of tools and processes do you use for a quality program in your company? And he actually broke that up into 2 separate podcasts, but that's not the only one I'd suggest you listen to. He also has a great 2-episode podcast on Deming's 14 points on quality. So if you want to get started with quality, the 2 Deming 14 points episode, excellent reference for you to get started. Therefore, my only helpful resource for you this week is to stop by at Paul's Quality 101 podcast and check it out. And now let us move on to the main topic, part 2 of the interview with Dave Davis. Just to remind you quickly, Dave's credentials, they include 20 years of experience in project management. He's a certified PMP and also an accredited educator. He has, of course, a passion for project portfolio management. And in today's second part of the interview, we will take a look at this passion as well. So here's part 2 of the interview, and we will actually start up with the final question that I asked him to get you kind of back into the feeling of it all.
The Project Management Podcast feature interview. Today with David L. Davis, PMP.
You've recently begun writing a blog. It's called Tools, Trends and Thoughts on Project Management. It's a blog on IT Toolbox, and I'm going to put a link into the show notes so that people can easily find it. What can we expect to learn from you on that particular blog? Because last time I checked, you had about 3 or 4 entries in the blog yet. What's coming? What have you in store for us?
Well, a couple things. Some are kind of theories, like I said, thoughts. I've got one out there that I call the 5 R's, which, when my dad was growing up in the Roosevelt administration of reading, writing, arithmetic, I think in the 80s I joked that they brought in Redmond as a 4th R, the Microsoft Office tool set. And now I'm saying that the 5th R is going to be reporting, that a project manager's got to be able to report their information clean and crisp. They really have to understand how to report this back. So you're going to see thoughts like that. I think you'll see some actual templates and some things that I've found successful in some different areas. Actually, I'm working on one right now for a change management template and an associated process that goes with that. I think you'll see different tidbits of governance, various points of governance within a project. For example, how should you communicate to new people in the project what is expected of them? What do they do when they get an issue? I think there's some things from a governance perspective that can be brought up front in the project that the project manager can share with the teammates. So, like I said, if you get an issue assigned to you, what do you do? And with a tool, there's things such as go in and accept the issue or update in the tool. So there's lots of different mechanics that are also involved in managing the portfolio piece of that. So you'll see some of that. You'll see some, like I said, thoughts. I got one on there and talked about a lot on the convergence of tools going forward. I really see the portfolio, and we'll probably talk about this more later, but the portfolio management tool being tightly linked with your requirements tools, or they may actually be the same one, process tools and some of those things. I think we're going to see more and more convergence where we're going to have one place that's going to be able to tie these pieces together. It seems I'm getting a lot of phone calls tonight.
Well, that's the life of a portfolio manager.
Yeah, and there's things, I'll just go out there and ramble on some stuff. What am I thinking at the time? What are my thoughts? And what are your thoughts to go with it? And I think you'll see some other editorials like, why do project managers hate portfolio management?
Yeah. Are you going to do any portfolio management tool reviews at all?
I don't have any planned right at the moment. I'm trying to keep technology agnostic because, as we talked about before, the tool or the technology really is irrelevant to the way you as a business manage your portfolio.
Mm-hmm. Now, in one of my past episodes here on the program, I did a little trends of PMOs, and I was kind of looking into the future, and I said that, frankly, portfolio management systems, that is a function of a good PMO. What are your thoughts on that? Was I right? Was I wrong? Is it part of a good PMO, or is it something completely different? Because portfolio management today seems to be the hot topic.
Yeah. Well, first, I think we need to define system. Are you talking something that is, PC tool-based, or are you talking about the overall functions process of your business?
The overall function.
Okay. Yeah, I agree completely. And I think you can't walk away from tools. You cannot be a competitor today if you're still writing out notes by hand and sending down to a typing steno pool to be able to distribute via snail mail. That just won't work. So you do need to have the tools. But you don't necessarily need to have the most powerful tool on the block either. You need to have one that fits what your business is doing. And I do agree that in order to be a PMO, you need to have those tools in place to support. You need to have that system. Actually, I've been referencing several times, and I think you actually did a podcast with a man named Jerry Hill, who wrote a wonderful book called The Complete PMO. And he has a fantastic model of 4 different types of PMOs. And I think that kind of plays into the question you had as far as the system and supporting the PMO. I think you're going to have different scales of how your PMO is aligned. I think that'll sort of be, and that will drive the type of tool set you need to support it. If you're mainly a manufacturing organization per se, you're going to have a few projects, but probably not too many. Your job's going to be to get X number of items out the door at lowest cost, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. While if you're in a service organization, you may have a lot of things. For example, if you're involved in building, and what you're actually doing is arranging and coordinating multiple subcontractors to be able to come into your buildings to do their pieces dependent on the other, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe a smaller operation, but I think that has a high need for a portfolio management system. So it's going to be a little bit more of a structured PMO. And like I said, with Jerry's book, some real good model of where some of this comes in with the functions the PMO is supporting and the size of the PMO. And so I agree with you completely that a good PMO needs to have the system to support what they're doing.
Mm. What I'll do is, do you happen to remember the exact title of the book?
Yes, the exact title is The Complete PMO.
The Complete PMO, wonderful. What I'll do
it's
is...
the Complete Project Office the Complete Project Management Office
Handbook. Okay. I'm not sure. I think I may have a link to that on my website. If not, I'm definitely going to put one up in the show notes so that people can find it directly right there. Now, one thing we haven't talked about yet is your passion for portfolio management. How did that come about? Why are you so passionate about this particular topic?
Well, one, I'm kind of a technology junkie. And I was involved in an organization that was just starting up. And it was pretty high profile within a pretty big company, and there were a lot of different groups that were involved in it. And we were feeling terrible pain as far as any sort of consistency, mainly on dates of these projects. Now they're saying, well, this customer's at this state, this customer's at that state, and you got some salespeople going out the door, bringing more people into your funnel, and your funnel, you don't really know where they are. Are they close? Are they far? Et cetera, et cetera. So I had a need there, and I went to my manager and said, there's tools out there that can help us better manage that. And they're like, fine, look into it, give us back a recommendation, et cetera. And fortunately, I was able to find a tool within my company that was just recently implemented on portfolio management. I was able to get some licenses, and I started addressing this one need, and I just found it to be kind of fun. That's being able to tie together these different pieces and to be able to get away from calls where you spend 80% of your time, bickering over one particular day, one particular item, and being able to drive that together to get to a higher plateau where you're really dealing with how to best service your customer. So that started, and I started getting a passion for it. I just found it very enjoyable to be able to take a tool and help my organization do their job better. And it's then branched into some other areas. There's been some other organizations that I've implemented the tool for them within the same company and a few other things. And I guess it's the ability to be able to, not in a Norm Abrams way, but to be able to take raw materials and produce a usable result. And that's where my passion's been for it.
Okay. While we're talking about the implementations that you've done, let's see, what are some of the great adoptions that you've seen in the companies that you've worked for? Are there any ones that just, stand out in your mind that you'd have to say, wow, this was absolutely great?
Yeah, there's one that I'm pretty near and dear to, and that is a sales organization, believe it or not, that was selling electronic servicing for customers, and it was able to bring things in across different companies and et cetera, under a common project platform, a common ability to be able to measure the status and et cetera. And over the course of a couple of years, they've actually got some pretty impressive numbers as far as productivity gains. And that one time they had like 16 project managers doing 120 projects, I think was their number. Now they're down to like 6 project managers doing 180. So part of that, honestly, is the maturity of the product and the organization, et cetera. It's not just the tool, but I think the tools played into that. I've seen another group that deals with specifically change requests to customer services that are being provided. And they've been able to do some pretty impressive things with their portfolio as far as aligning customer impact for generic changes to the service. If I were to use an example thing going on right now, I don't know if anybody's a Yahoo user, but Yahoo Mail is going into a new version of Yahoo Mail. The old one's still supported, but eventually it'd migrate, et cetera. What this group does is something similar to that, where there's an application out there that's static, and it's going to a new release, and it's able to manage with all their different customers, notifications, test environments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I've seen that be very effective. I've seen some small pockets of IT that's been able to do it, but I have to confess the larger IT groups have struggled, and I think there's a couple reasons. I think one is over-engineering. They're trying to get this thing be the silver bullet and do everything for everybody, and it ends up being an administrative nightmare to keep feeding the beast. So I have seen that, and then, like I said, the other thing I've seen in some ITs is they seem to be pretty good at being able to define this is what we're going to do, and these are our projects and their numbers. But the care and feeding through the control execution of the stage to delivery seems to fall behind. And I think part of that is it's hard to define at what level of the task do you want to track, and especially across the portfolio. And I know there's lots of things going on. One, the PMI is actually bringing out a new WBS set of standards that I think is going to be a little bit more delivery-focused and less task-focused. And then there's the entire Goldblatt critical chain and some of those other theories where you need to focus at a higher level than just the task. But some of these are at the task. So an IT group may have 8 programmers that are developers that are out there and working on something, and they're trying to track what are all these modules and what's their status, et cetera. And they end up getting so caught up in the detail, the old forest and the trees analogy. So I've seen a little bit of both. But probably the biggest success has been the sales organization that I've seen, and then some smaller IT groups that were able to use it effectively. But I've seen it fall down for bigger IT groups at this time.
If you allow me to summarize this, what I've heard from you through the interview now is you have to have the right processes. The tool is not really all that important. It's better to start small and not think that the system is your silver bullet, and don't over-architect the system. Is that kind of summing it up in order to go towards a great implementation?
Yeah, that's summing it up, and I'd like to add a few other things there too. Adoption of all organizations is critical, and that's also probably the toughest area. I've seen groups say, how dare this person assign me an issue? I mean, who do they think they are to go into their tool and say, I'm responsible for this issue? So dealing with those things, and what we've found really that helped us get over a ton of these hurdles and the acceptance that this one tool was the business information source for projects was utilization of reports by the top executives. When they actually pulled some reports from our tool, and when they were doing a meeting, a group meeting, whatever, put those on the screen for everybody to see that these are the things I'm looking for. that brought so much credibility and respect for the tool that it greatly helped with adoption. So you need to have that higher level use the outputs of your tool and show to all their partners that I'm managing what we're doing based on this portfolio, which then drives, again, more pressure to be compliant and some of those other things. So it's a pretty good circle that happens, a pretty good check and balance piece. We say that we own the information, we can provide the information for you, so use it. They start using it, then the pressure comes on, make sure that information is current, accurate, concise, that I can look at it and know what it means. If something's in yellow, I know what yellow means. If something's in red, I know what red means. And some of those things, if there's an issue out there that requires my executive involvement, you're able to ping me right away. And we've actually done some things with our tool where we do some creative emails where certain things are set up. We can shoot emails off to different people. For example, somebody goes in and puts an issue in there as severely critical, phase 1, pretty high. It actually shoots off an email to the manager of that person, so they're at least aware of it. Because obviously you're not going to have constant monitoring of the tool. You need some pings for you. So adoption's clearly one of the biggest challenges. And along with that line, again, determining what is your output that you're going to derive from this, and how do you want to give it to your people. We actually generate a lot of reports and put them out in PDF file. Excuse me, because we think that's critical for especially sharing project plans across organizations and et cetera, because it gives it that protection level. However, we have a lot of people that want to be able to sort based on a lot of different things. For example, we have product managers that support a multitude of products for what we're implementing in this portfolio. So they're going to want to sort or filter based on their products. So we started doing a bunch of filters in the tool, and we realized that when you chose a filter, if 62 of them showed up, it was the same as 0 showing up. It was just overwhelming. So we built some links into Excel, and people are now able to go into their Excel and do an update, and then they're more comfortable with it. They're able to sort it. The cliche, slice it and dice it however they want, millions of julienne fries. And we found that to be pretty useful. So being able to give that data or give that information out to your various stakeholders in a media from which they can utilize it to do their job better is clearly a step forward in adoption.
To close out the interview, let's take a look into the future.
Okay.
Where do you predict portfolio management will be in, say, 5-10 years? Give us your outlook. What do you think is coming?
I think it's going to be critical. I think you're going to start seeing RFPs here in the next couple of years where they're going to talk about how do you measure your progress of your portfolios and where do we define stages of which we pay or not pay. I think you're going to see some things like that based on your portfolio is going to drive some of those things. Resource allocation. The fact that portfolios can do resource allocation, I think, is going to get a lot of scale and power, et cetera, within an organization, because now you're able to look really at a cost, at a somewhat of a manageable cost aspect of it, and get an idea for what's really possible, what's not really possible. I think, as I said before, that the ability of it to be able to provide information for the business for all your work in process, I think that's going to be major. And it's not going to be the infamous everything's 80% complete. It's going to be phased with some details. I don't think earned value is going to be able to be as widely accepted as we've always wanted to be just because of some of the complexity of earned values. But I think you're going to be able to see it generate some burn rate reports and some of those other things that are going to be able to actually compare costs of your project with the current statuses and states. And I think you're going to see some more financial models that are going to be able to do that measure of the work in process and where you are. And there's going to be in the portfolio management tool, that's going to have that core of information of what are your projects, what are your resources working on it, where are they going. I definitely see convergence I talked before about your process tool maybe in there, or your requirements tool or whatever. I think you'll also see convergence with time reporting. So people will check time reports into their portfolio manager, so they're able to more definitively assign costs to an individual project. And then that will somehow be able to hook into a payroll or whatever to be able to track the payable hours, billable hours, those sorts of things. So I see those sorts of convergences coming together. I think portfolio management is going to also blossom with PMI is coming out with some new certifications, et cetera, for portfolio management. It's going to get more accepted as a practice, that it is distinct from project management, that it has very many capabilities and or / functionalities that is different than project management, and that it's going to give you the capability to not only look at work in process, but also to be able to better forecast or define your funnel or work that's on the horizon. You know, I submit, and I don't have any concrete data on this, I submit that I'll use the Pareto principle, that 80% of your issues and et cetera for a project happen during the planning phase and before a project is even christened and made to go on as a project and kickoffs and et cetera. Portfolio management tools that can give you the capability to manage that planning piece and to be able to do it in a consistent manner, et cetera, and therefore make implementation a lot easier to happen and less cycle times to get the project kicked off, because it's going to be a migration from one phase to the other. So I see lots of things that are coming together. Your process is getting a little bit more aligned. Your payroll is getting a little bit more aligned. Your forecasting, your measurement of your work in process, trending. You'll see probably more and more variance things, especially if it's a company that's doing some sort of consulting or outsourcing of service type work. Traditionally we have X number of hours in order to do this function. So as they respond to RFPs or do bids, they're able to give a more accurate measure of how much time they're really spending on it. And there's going to be collaboration. You're going to be doing projects with your supplier or with your customer or whatever, where you're going to be hooked into the same portfolio management tool, and you're going to be working from one sheet of paper. You're all going to be working off the whole thing. So that ability of the securities and stuff to make sure that company A can't see anything of company B, I think will be a feature that portfolio management is going to drive. But I think the economies of scale are going to drive more collaboration among organizations into the same tools.
Wow, lots of predictions. Yeah. I think I'll have to bring you back in about 5 years, and we'll play this answer again, and we'll review and see if all of this has come true.
Now you see why my blog is titled Thoughts, Thoughts and Trends. I guess I should have used that answer for your previous question.
Let's see. Are you ready to move on to the final 10 questions? Same questions I ask every project manager?
I think I am ready to move on.
All right. So, number 1, what was your favorite project?
Oh, I struggle with this one because I can give you a smart alecky answer like everyone. But actually, my favorite project really had to do with the project team I worked on. It's been several years ago. There was a small group of us that actually implemented a capability to be able to auto-generate scripts for different pieces of technology. There were like 4 of us on the project, and it was great because really our management basically said, you have this amount of time, go do what you think you need to do and don't bother us. Probably so that don't bother us from management. It's one of the reasons it was my favorite. But that was a great camaraderie among the members of the team, and lifelong friendships were formed, and we still keep in touch, even though I think of the 4 of us that were there then, I think we're now in 4 different companies. So that was clearly my favorite because we were given so much autonomy. You guys know a need. You convinced us that something needs to be done. So we trust you enough to go off and do it, and here's your limitations. These are your restrictions. You got X amount of time. we're not going to buy any capital. We're not going to invest in anything. So you got that amount of time, and go do it. And we did.
All right. Number 2, what project would you like to have managed?
That's one. Tom Peters does a neat thing about, he puts something out that says, on time, on budget, who gives a damn? And then he uses the channel as an example. I would love to do something like that. Actually, I would have liked to have done the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C., or something like that gives such a sense of pride to people, but also just has one of those things that you can point at and say, I did that. It's really tough when you're implementing an email management system to be able to point to anything and say, look, I did that, because there's really nothing to see. But something tangible, like I said, that piece. And I've been involved in some Habitat for Humanities and some other things where I've been involved in some of that project management, and that's neat to be able to see a tangible result. But I'm back to the World War II Memorial in Washington, the one I would have liked to have managed.
Yeah, I think you're the second person who actually said they would have liked to have managed that one. Okay,
okay,
number
then
3. What is your favorite? No, you can. It's okay if 2 people want to manage the same project,
I think
that's good for business.
Yeah, well, it actually speaks a lot for what project managers really are looking for, is to be able to put out something with quality that's awe-inspiring, and et cetera. That somebody can look at that and identify.
Number 3, what is your favorite project management book?
Well, there's several. I already referenced to Jerry Hill, but actually my best is one called The Deadline Principles. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. DeMarco is the author of it, and it's kind of interesting because he talks about somebody who worked for a big telephone company in New Jersey, and he's all of a sudden laid off. And then some strange person from the country of Moldova comes and picks him up and takes him over to Moldova and says, we got a lot of things. Somebody needs to figure out how we need to manage these projects. Go figure that out for us. So he goes through this little bit of a story type thing and some different things they encounter and his lessons learned as a project manager on it. And it's just a delightful read. And it's my favorite project management book. And I like the ones that really...
It's my favorite as well.
Oh, so you're familiar with it. Okay.
Yes, I'm familiar with it, but like you, I couldn't tell you who wrote it. It's been years since I last read it, so I actually have to look it up, and I'll put a link up on the website as well for that. Number 4, what is the topic of the next seminar that you are planning to attend?
Let's see, I'm going to the PMI Global Congress in Seattle. I'm actually presenting a paper there on an analogy between geese and program management, and how when geese do their 1,000-mile migrations or whatever, they actually have to work together, and there's several things that, the lead person will go to the back and another goose will take the lead to Z and take the most resistance, etc. So that's the next seminar I'm planning to attend. I am also going to be presenting at Project World and Business Analyst World in Orlando in November.
Number 5, what is the best way to make a project fail?
Arrogance of the project manager. I know you probably frequently hear communication, et cetera, et cetera. There's some prima donna project managers, and if you don't get your people wanting to help you succeed or wanting to succeed for themselves, it'll fail. I've mentioned several times that really the best way to measure a successful project is somebody's willing to put it as the top line of their resume, that they're able to identify their professional career by being involved in this project. So I think the best way to make a project fail is to not embrace that team concept, not bring everybody in together, not be able to laugh when you need to laugh, and be able to cry when you need to cry, and be able to kick butt when you need to kick butt. Those things happen. But if it's a project manager that comes in with some sort of a saunter, and I'm the project manager, and therefore you need to give me these statuses at this point in time, yada yada yada, and it's all one way. You feed me. I'm not going to give you anything back. I think that's the best way to make it fail.
Number 6, how do you like to celebrate a successful project?
That's kind of tongue in cheek, but yeah, there is a feeling of relief once the project's successful. Things have changed a lot. 15 years ago, you were able to get some budget to maybe do a lunch or something with your team. I see some of those things go away. I've actually liked to do things when we do a lessons learned where I go into my little Printmaster and generate some different certificates and be able to give them to people. At the end that you were the one most likely to be late to a meeting. And I'm also a comics buff. I mean, I go out to the web all the time reading comics off the web. I hope nobody's here from like United Media, the copyright folks, but I'll take a comic and print on that little certificate. So that's how I kind of like to celebrate. I'd like to be able to do it with a group where we're able to get off site and be able to feed people and give them something to drink, but we're not always allowed to do that with budgets.
Number 7, in your projects, where do you focus most of your attention in order to be successful?
Governance. How do I control the day-to-day things? How do you communicate to me if there's something wrong or something right? How do we communicate up on the status or if we need your help, what your help is? Clearly part of that is planning, and planning, of course, is extremely important. I think it was Dwight Eisenhower who had a quote that said, "Plans are worthless, but planning is essential." And I tend to agree with that. I see governance as a planning process, constantly analyzing and reevaluating where your project is, where it needs to be. Like I said, having that capability for your team members understand how to communicate with you and that you're able to communicate effectively where your project is.
Number 8, if you weren't a project manager, what would you like to be?
Oh, let's see. Don't know. Again, this is one I fought with a little bit. I actually was a teacher before I went into the business world, and believe me, that's the toughest project manager job there is, because you clearly need to identify, how to keep, 30 kids gainfully active for 60-minute blocks. I would say what I really would like to be is something involved in social services or things like that, the Habitats for Humanities, things like that. I'd like to be a construction person or somebody that can build things from raw materials into, awe-inspiring art or functionality. I have no art skills at all. I flunked Stickman in 3rd grade. So I guess that's one thing I'd like to be, is to be able to be creative with my hands. And, for example, the Norm Abrams or the World War II Memorial, that being able to create that level of item from raw materials.
Number 9, what is the one thing that a project manager cannot live without?
Getting away from project management for a while, separating their life from the project. If they don't, they will die. My true answer to that is my family, my wife and my kids. I mean, I couldn't live without them. They're very supportive and et cetera. But not all project managers are necessarily have families or things like that. But, the one thing that will kill you is 24 by 7 by 365 doing nothing but working on your projects. Now, that's not necessarily that it's all that there are things you can't do with hobbies that may not be somewhat project focused or that, but constantly doing it. And I'm fortunate from my personal perspective. I think I sent you a picture. I also happen to have a physical resemblance to a man from the North Pole. I have the white beard and et cetera. And I actually do some things in December with kids. And I lost a sister to breast cancer last year, and I'm working with the Cancer Society to do Santa Claus for kids who are going through cancer with their parents. And so some things with that. So, yeah, that's part of what I mean about something outside of your work life, to be able to get out and do things, contribute back to the community. And I think it's wonderful, like what you're seeing with Bill Gates and Warren Buffett about, using their wealth they've accumulated over the years, in a philanthropy mode, and being able to use it with some well-defined objectives and et cetera. So it's kind of the same thing as on a smaller scale. I don't have $20 billion to put into it, but I can still put in some time on things outside of my project management job.
Number 10. Finally, that's the oldest question in project management. What is more important in a project manager? Is it project management expertise or is it industry expertise?
Industry, business acumen. Project management, again, is a methodology and a set of tools and a formatting, templates, etc. But you need somebody that really understands your business, that can do the analysis of what does this mean. That if you look at a list of tasks, that they know, this task requires such and such, or this task has a downstream impact of here. So we need to bring in that organization to make them aware that something's happening. So business acumen is the term I like to use. As far as industry, that I don't know. I'm sure that somebody in an IT, IT as an industry can go from an IT shop to an IT shop fairly easily. But going from an IT shop for a telecom to an IT shop that produces automobiles, I think is quite a jump. I clearly got the industry expertise and the business acumen.
Well, Dave, thank you very much for having been on the program today. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Cornelius, and look forward to it. And, you've got some wonderful things going on out there with your podcast, and I look forward to them every week, or every time they come out, I should say, not necessarily weekly, but fairly consistent. I'll give you credit for that. I think you're doing a wonderful job of compliance with deliverables in a reasonable time frame.
Thank you.
Okay.
And that was David L. Davis talking to me about project portfolio management. Yeah, and that's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. Tune in again next week when we will be talking about project management in Japan through the eyes of a project manager from Germany who now lives in the United States. Talk about culture shock here. As always, you can find us on the web at www.thepmpodcast.com, or you can send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com. And when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. If you don't plan, it doesn't work. If you do plan, it doesn't work either. So why plan? With that, remember what I always say. PM is people management. You want to focus on the people on your project and bring them together as a team. You want the people to work as a team, because if all members of a team operate individually, in the end, the product will just be as disjointed as the team was. Until next time.